welcome to today's edition of Pegasus Tests. On today's edition, we're reviewing using the Primary Arms 1:6 by 24 scope with ACSS reticle in a CQB environment. The ACSS reticle has got super capabilities in range finding. A lot of reticles have come in the past that have offered range finding capabilities, and a lot of them work fairly well, but not like the ACSS. This has got phenomenal capabilities, and it's easy to learn and intuitive to use. Check out Brent0331's channel. He's done extensive work with this reticle on different scopes, and what he's done I can't top. So when it comes how to use those range finding features, definitely check out what he's doing. What we've done today is gone out and used this scope on a low power setting, 1 power to be specific, in a CQB environment, and see how that stacks up. Is it viable in that environment? How does it compare to dedicated red dots and scopes like that?
Here we have the ACSS reticle in its unlighted function. There's 11 power settings, and we're going to cycle through them here so everybody gets a chance to see what they're like. Setting number 1, not really much change. The reticle is etched into the glass, and illuminated it appears black to the eye, and it's actually pretty effective. You find in most cases you don't need illumination, but here is setting 2. Setting 2, still not showing much illumination. These are for low light settings. 3, the reticle's getting a little more defined. 4, you're starting to see. 5, now it's definitely red. Now you can definitely see the red illumination. 6, now it's becoming very defined. 7, 8, 9, becoming very powerful, almost overwhelming in this light setting. 10, very bright, almost making the features of the reticle indistinct. Finally 11, the most powerful, clearly overwhelming. Also notice that it's the main circle, chevron, and ladder that's lit, not the rangefinder off to the right or the 2 leading dots to the right and left of the main horseshoe. The Primary Arms scope with the ACSS reticle is a second focal plane scope. That means to get all the use out of the range-finding capabilities, you have to have the scope turned up to its maximum power. On this particular scope, that's 6 power. But what I'm going to focus on today is in a CQB environment. When taking this scope into a CQB environment, the first thing you got to do is get it down to 1 power, and that's done with the power adjustment wheel here on the scope. Right now we already have it set to 1 power. But by turning this wheel, you go to 2, 3, all the way up to 6. Really, any power adjustment over about 1.5 is really too much in CQB. By having the scope on 1 power, that gives you the ability for it to function like a red dot, such as an EOTech, which is probably the reticle that most closely mimics what this scope does. When you look down the reticle, which you've already seen earlier in the video, it's a point and surrounded by a horseshoe. When you're into that CQB environment, obviously the point is where your bullet's going to go, but the horseshoe allows you to get on target very quickly. When that's magnified, that can just throw your vision off and kind of confuse your brain and delay you for parts of a second, but it's enough. By having it on 1 power, it allows you to keep both eyes open, and the image will superimpose just like a holographic sight or a red dot. Earlier in the video we showed the different power settings, and just to quickly reiterate, settings 1 and 2 are basically for extremely low light or even more appropriately with some night vision use. But the rest of the settings allow you to see the sight pretty well in daylight depending on the intensity of the light outside. I've gone ahead and laid the rifle over on its side, so I do want to apologize for having to tilt your head to see this, but it was the best way to get close up to this part of the dial on the scope. You'll see the little white mark next to the 0. That's your indicator of what power setting you're on. You want to get that set before you begin your CQB practice. You want to know what setting you want. You want to know what it is, because you don't want to be messing with it once you go into the building. That's one of those things that has to be right. Certain scopes, like an ACOG, where it's using ambient light through a fiber optic, will automatically adjust the light. But when you're trusting battery powered, you've kind of got to know which setting you want and have it set beforehand. It's not something you want to be fiddling with while you're doing the middle of your CQB. Also, another very important adjustment on the scope is back here with the diopter ring. I've gone ahead and taken the scope cover off to show it a little clearer, but the purpose of that is to get the internals focused on the scope so you can see the reticle clearly. The purpose of this is to adjust it to your eyesight, whether you've got perfect 20/20 vision or you've got near vision, or nearsightedness or farsightedness. This helps you adjust it so the scope is there and you can see the reticle inside clearly. And if you can't see that clearly, all the other adjustments you're going to make with the scope are kind of a no-go. So you want to get this critical first step taken care of. I've gone ahead and mounted my primary arm scope onto my Delton Echo 316. It's a .308 caliber rifle, a bit much for CQB, I admit, but the gun's designed to be able to perform from there out to 600 plus yards, so needed to be tried out in that environment. As you can see in the upcoming video, you definitely, no doubt, the gun goes off in a closed room. One of the drawbacks of having the fixed front sight post is that it does interfere with the sight picture. Your reticle generally appears right between the two protective ears, and it can be a little bit of annoying. I will be modifying the gun in the future to replace it with a free float rail and a low profile gas block to eliminate this problem. But it is one you do need to be aware of, and that can be fixed by one of two ways. One is the solution I've just mentioned. I'm going to pull that fixed front sight post off, low profile gas block. I've already picked out my rail system I'm going to put on there, just haven't done it yet. The other way is just get higher rings that'll get it over so the sights are a little bit lower in the scope and won't be as obtrusive as they are right now. Right now the front sight post is right about in the middle of the scope when you look through it. When you have the scope dialed up to the higher powers, 4 and above to be precise, all the way up to 6 on this particular scope, the front sight post just completely disappears. It is a complete non-issue. However, when you dial the scope back to 1 power, which we've done here for CQB, yeah, it's right there and you notice it. Now you'll also notice in the video we can perform. We are doing the job. It's not detrimental. It doesn't prevent you from effectively doing CQB, but it is something to be aware of when you pick out this combination. The ACSS reticle is relatively new to the market, so there's not a lot of places you can get it. One's from Primary Arms with their series of scopes right here being demonstrated, but you can also get it on the Hollow Sun. Some of their small compact sites have the reticle in it, and also the Trigicon ACOG has an ACSS reticle now. The great thing about Primary Arms is the scopes are very reasonably priced. Of course, if Uncle Sam taps us all on the shoulder and says, hey guys, you got to go to Tora Bora and clean out Taliban, we're going to want the ACOG, and with that price tag well north of $1,000 and Uncle Sam footing the bill, sure, why not? But when it's coming out of your own pocket, what Primary Arms has got here is a pretty economical deal. It comes in, or the deal I got on this one on Amazon with the mount, came in just a tad over $400 with free shipping on Prime. So, that places it well into the realm of affordability. And the capabilities you get with this scope, it is functional in CQB. But properly zeroed using the rangefinder, making hits at 600 yards is well within the scope's capability as well. So it's a good investment at a good price.
In these next scenes that you're about to see, we use the ACSS reticle in a CQB environment. We have it set to 1 power, and the day was so bright I actually needed no illumination whatsoever, although I did try it on different settings and found that with it off it worked just as well. Now the first couple scenes you'll see me using the Delton in 308 room clearing, and then you'll see another member of our team using a regular AR and an EOTech, because the reticles have a lot in common. Both have a center point. In case the ACSS, it's a chevron, and the EOTech, it's a dot. And then they have an outer circle. On ACSS, it's a horseshoe thick ring, and on the EOTech, it's a 65 MOA ring with 4 hash marks at the 4 cardinal points of north, south, east, and west. Figuring these were equally similar, we figured it was a good way to compare and contrast. As you've seen, we were able to move through the CQB simulator at a fairly reasonable pace using both rifles, both reticles. Didn't seem to have one have an advantage over the other, which is good considering this is a variable power scope. The fact that you can dial it back to 1 power and have it be equally as effective as a dedicated red dot or EOTech type scope is a pretty good capability, especially since this scope with its mount is cheaper than your average EOTech. We'd like to thank you for tuning in today. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and tune in for future gear test videos.